no. No. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Hi.
Hey. Sorry you're not putting the video on. It's okay. I'm just checking. It's all good.
There wasn't even one case there.
I'm actually like literally sitting down for dinner.
Oh,
So I know that I look really good, but like while I'm eating, not as much.
no, but like watch the recording later. Like, oh my gosh.
I will show you a picture of the pizza that I made though. Like, look at this beauty. Yum.
Okay. Not gonna lie, it
Right?
looks great.
Looks good, man. Looks good.
Crust from scratch?
What?
Crust from scratch or frozen?
Oh, yeah.
Overachiever.
Dude, making pizza crust is like, something that you can do in your sleep.
If you don't always
When people,
kill you. Hypothetically speaking.
when people are like, oh, wow, you make your own pizza dough, I'm like, literally, I mix flour and yeast. Like, not rocket science. But yeah.
You feel stupider. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Not my intention, but like legit, you make challah dough, you can make pizza dough.
You make many assumptions.
I'll just keep assuming. I know they are a rock star, so there you go. Rock on. All right, I will shut the audio so I can eat and not gross people out with my chewing noises.
There's
I'm
actually
here, though.
a name
Definitely
for
here.
that when a person gets incredibly enraged when they hear people chewing. It's an actual
Normal.
Wait, you get enraged when you hear people chewing?
No, just like, oh wow, this is information. I mean, the microphone is legit next to my mouth. It's not like we're sitting at a table together. It's like legit all of the things is just listening to my chewing. So it's like, okay, less necessary.
Okay. So yes, there are people that literally could see themselves physically murdering somebody just because they're chewing loudly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not that intense.
Yeah.
Just low key. Cool.
Alrighty.
All right.
So I don't know if we're gonna wait for anyone, and if any, we're just gonna start. Yeah. Okay. So basically, this chapter is honestly one of the chapters that has been bothering me since I was in high school. No joke. This chapter has been tormenting me and plaguing me since I was in high school, and I learned it, I think it was like 11th grade, whatever it was, and because it's another one of those stories that doesn't have like a neatly packaged, satisfying answer. There are certain chapters in the Tanakh that are more perplexing than others, and some of them truly just have no resolution as of yet, right? It's not that there is no resolution, it's that it has not yet been revealed. And this is one of the biggies, because from start to finish, first of all, just because so many concepts like prophecy, false prophecy, the entire spectrum, honestly, the entire range of prophecy. And Rambam himself delineates in the second section of Guide to the Perplexed that there is a whole multi-tiered, like prophecy is not this one, monolithic thing. It is a multi-tiered entity. I think he said it's like either 12 or 13 levels. And he goes into detail describing like, oh, level 7 of prophecy is drastically different than level 8. And he goes like literally the description, like, whether you're only receiving audio or also visual and audio or only audio, or like all the different permutations of different experiences. But all that aside, we still don't understand anything about it because frankly, it really isn't something that's to be understood. It's experiential. Just like you can't explain to somebody, no matter how eloquently or articulately, what you felt like when you fell in love with somebody, right? And you could like try till the cows come home to like use every verb, adjective, metaphor, simile, you name it. And a person will still be left scratching their heads like, I kind of get what you're saying. And then when they experience it, it's that one split moment where they feel it in their bodies and in their brains and in their heart. And all the volumes that you just spend saying are nothing because what 1 second can do, that's it. They just experienced it, all right. And that's honestly true for all mystical experience. That's why the Arizal's writings are so weird, because he understands this is not something you can explain. You have to experience like what it's like to go between the different levels and the different worlds and whatever it is. And so he writes in code, and that's why the sages always say, he who understands, understands. Like if you've been there, you'll know what I'm talking about if I just say the word purple. Like you'll already understand by yourself. I don't need to explain what shade of purple and what texture. Oh, you've been here? Okay, fine. So it's purple, unlike the other realm, which is like blue, obviously, right? But they're not going to give you details. So that's the thing. When we read the chapters that go into the nuances of prophetic experience, it's just something that when we try to use our rational conscious brain, which is what we're using when we're learning, it doesn't serve us so much. We're still left perplexed because you have to use the chachma brain, or even above that, actually, really, you have to use keser. But just the super rational, experiential, that's where things make sense, where they click, because you're like, oh, okay, duh, of course. So until prophecy comes back, which again, we know already before Mashiach comes, every single one of us is going to become a prophet and prophetess. Until that point, we're just going to be scratching our head saying, what? I kind of sort of get this, but we're still going to make an attempt because I think we'll discover something really, really interesting despite everything. I definitely know more now than I did when I was in high school, but not much. I can tell you that much. That when I reread the chapter, I still felt like I was that, 16-year-old girl in high school hearing, I think it was either Rav Rahimi or Rabbi Brown's like Navi Shir, and just having so many theological problems about like, where's the free will and what's going on here? And how can this prophet, like, did he know? Did he not know? It's so unclear throughout this entire chapter who's doing things maliciously, who's doing things from a place of cluelessness. Like, how much do they know? What do they know? What do they not know? We'll see if we can try to piece something together from the clues within the text itself. I personally am still left with more questions than answers on that topic. It's not clear to me, what are the different characters' motivations, because I think it's also written rather ambiguously, where it's just not so clear whether the false prophet is trying to lead the true prophet to his demise, or whether he's truly oblivious to their different statuses, so, but yeah, let's dive right in. I did want in this opportunity to cover a little bit of what I didn't cover last time, because I realized after I clicked leave meeting that there are certain important points I didn't get to about Yeravam, right? Yeravam ben Nevat, about like how he sets up, right, the alternative, religious systems. And so the 2 points I didn't cover is location, which Sarah Pluck, and I owe you an apology. I was on autopilot when you asked me about where he set up the 2 centers, and I said Beersheba and Dan, and no, it was Beit El and Dan, because again, Beersheba is already in the tribe of Judah slash Shimon, so obviously it wouldn't be in Beersheba, but every single time the Tanakh wants to describe Eretz Yisrael from its southernmost point to its northernmost point, again, when it's a unified kingdom, it says, from Midan Vad Beersheba, from north to south, from Dan, which is modern day Tel Dan, a very popular archaeological site near the Golan, or in the Golan near the Hermon, all the way down to Beersheba. That's halachic Eretz Yisrael, meaning anything below Beersheba, if I'm not mistaken, is not halachically part of Eretz Yisrael, which is why in a Shemitah year, the fruits and vegetables that grow there are totally fine. They do not have to shachvi'it, so you don't have to you don't have to double wrap the peels and the pits. And so again, that's why Eilat is also halachically not Eretz Yisrael, and that's why all the watermelons and melons or whatever grows there that gets imported to the rest of Israel in a Shemitah year does not have kedusha, does not have the problem of shvi'it. So anyway, but the point is that Yeravam sets up his northern kingdom. That's really how the two kingdoms split up into north and south, right? Binyamin, Yehuda, Shimon being Jerusalem and southward, which is the southern kingdom, Mamlechet Yehuda, and then basically northern Jerusalem up, meaning Beit El, right, like right next to modern day Ramallah. So, and north, that's the northern kingdom, otherwise known as the kingdom of the 10 tribes. Just one sec, I want to do share screen for a second. Where are we? I prepared something. Is this it? I think so. 1 second. No, hold on. Not this. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay, how the heck do you do Zoom here? Okay. Is that it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so just so you can see, right? So here's Jerusalem, the Dead Sea, right? So here's Beit El. So that's where one of the alternative temples was set up with the golden calf. And then here you have Dan, right? So as you see, literally on the Lebanese border, right? So this is biblical Dan. Anyone remember why the tribe of Dan, like why their portion was here? Is this their original geographical inheritance, their territory?
No, they wussed out from the coast.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Where in Eretz Yisrael was their original territory? In which area? Again, to this day, this region is still called Gush Dan. The buses are called the Dan buses, right? They're not Egged buses in this region of Eretz Yisrael. Literally because this is the ancient inheritance portion of the tribe of Dan. Yes, they wussed out and did not conquer it, and instead they, went up north to where there was a whole tribe of hippies, total pacifist hippies residing. They slaughtered them and just simply took over their land. Yeah, that's the ugly part of the book of Judges, where Dan just won't fight for their proper inheritance. But Sarah, where is Gush Dan?
Merkaz.
No, Yerushalayim is also in the Merkaz. Lo Chochma.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv area.
Okay, thank you. Gush Dan is the coastal area, specifically, right? So it's Hulon and Petach Tikva and Tel Aviv, exactly. But if I'm not mistaken, Beit Shemesh inland is also like Beit Shemesh is the Kava Tefer. How do you say Kava Tefer? The
Seam line.
Yeah, that's the literal translation, but that'll work. But you guys understand what I mean by that's like the border between where Jerusalem ends and Dan begins is the Beit Shemesh Emek Ha'ela area, right? So anyway, so here we see where the two places are where Yeravam set up the Agalim, the calves, right? So basically bookending the northern kingdom, right? Here's the southernmost part of the northern kingdom of Mamlechet Israel, right? The kingdom of Israel, aka the 10 tribes, and the northern border bordering with Lebanon / Syria, Turkey, etc. Okay. Stop share for now. Okay. So basically, this chapter is also a stupendous chapter, proving why if you read the Tanakh in English, you've basically missed the point. So not to make the Anglos, English speakers feel bad, but basically without seeing the original Hebrew, the most intrinsic part of the book, of the story, goes completely over your head because you don't have the linguistic cues, right? If you cannot see, because when they translate the verbs, so the literary devices employed and woven through the entire chapter disappear because you don't see the puns and you don't see the literary motifs that Yirmiyahu has planted throughout the entire chapter to cue the reader what the point of this freaking chapter is. Because with that, if we're just reading through it, it is the trippiest chapter. But in Hebrew, it's actually a lot less trippy because you note the literary motifs jumping out because it's just so in your face. So let's just zoom out a little bit, run through the chapter briefly. Right. So I want to talk about, right before I space out again, Yeravam ben Nevat. So he sets up an alternative religious system. He sets up an alternative calendar, right? So why does he do that? We spoke a little bit last time. Why does he set up, no, a lot, but like about why does he set up an alternative religious system? Why does he ban the 10 tribes from going to Jerusalem for Korban Pesach, for anything?
The moment that he cuts that connection, then there's no way for tshuva.
Exactly.
Right?
But tshuva here is a pun, right? Because it means return, so it means spiritual return. And he's afraid that when they spiritually return, when they really repent and they connect with God in the most authentic sense, what is their heart going to awaken and start crying out for? To return to what?
Jerusalem.
Okay, no, but here it's like a magic. Wait, Magal Samim Gewalt. How do you call this? Sarah, I cannot speak English anymore. Oh my God!
Vicious cycle.
Magic cycle. Magal Samim is how you say the expression in Hebrew, but in English, like when.
It's usually called a vicious cycle, I think, but
that is what I was looking for. Vicious cycle. Thank you. And in Hebrew, it's magal ksamim. And I'm just like, how do you say it in English? I have no idea. Oh, dear Lord. Thank you, Sarlet. That was incredibly helpful. Vicious cycle. Exactly. So yeah, when they come to Jerusalem, their heart is going to awaken. But the reason he doesn't let them go to Jerusalem, so the heart should not awaken, so that a Jewish heart that is truly woke, right? So when a Jewish heart is woke, then it yearns for what? Other than Beit HaMikdash, nachon, but it yearns for a connection to something else. So what we said is because every Jew is inherently connected to the Davidic dynasty, so when they're in Jerusalem and when they're in Beit HaMikdash, then they start yearning to be ruled by a descendant from the Davidic dynasty. And they want a shalem, a whole Bnei Israel. They want 12 tribes, under a Davidic offspring. And so basically he cuts off that connection. So they shouldn't do teshuvah, so they shouldn't return to the house of David, that he should be able to continue to reign. And not only him, he's actually hoping to establish a dynasty of his own. So basically that is the return that he's terrified of, that the geographical return will cause a spiritual return, and the spiritual return will create a political return. Because again, there is a separation of church and state in this time, and also very much essentially, right? That's actually, the Lubavitch Rebbe spoke about the damage that a secular state of Israel, caused in 1948. He said, wow, like separating those two entities, like making it possible that there's a political entity that isn't a religious entity, that's so problematic. The fact that I can be an Israeli but not a Jew, or, I could have a government, but that's not striving to like bring Mashiach or to be Mashiach or to somehow, be a light unto the nations in the most halachic sense. I'm not talking about some kind of airy-fairy kumbaya, like, hippie new age sense. I mean like a real authentic Rambam sense of like, what does it really mean to be a light unto the nations? Not like a kissing up to the liberals type of thing. So basically, Yeravam sets up an alternative place system so that they should no longer go to Jerusalem. But he has to set up an alternative calendar as well. Why does he have to do that? Because just setting up an alternative place is definitely not enough. That's a recipe for failure. Oh yeah, don't go to Jerusalem anymore. I'm going to set up, all kinds of like goons to beat anybody up who wants to go to Jerusalem. But that would still fail with the Jewish people unless he sets up an alternative calendar. Why?
Maybe to create like alternative holidays. So kind of in a way, not to distract, but like in a way they have like their own holidays and whatever to keep track of. So
does he create
forget.
new holidays? Like, does he tell the people we're not going to celebrate Passover anymore? We're going to celebrate something else?
No, just on a different day, so they don't end up going back to Yerushalayim.
So it's not about creating alternative holidays like having, Christmaka or whatever, or like Halloween. That's all we're talking about. He's not talking about celebrating Halloween instead of Purim Chalila. We're talking about distracting, you use the perfect word, Sarla, distracting them from the original date, because he knows the Jewish people are like totally devoted and loyal to halacha. So they're going to keep on keeping, the three Aliyot L'Regel, right? The Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. Right? They're going to keep Rosh Hashanah. They're going to keep Yom Kippur. He said, but I can't have them going back to Jerusalem. So I know they're going to want to bring Korban Pesach, but I don't want them to like make that equation. So he knows if they go back on Yudalit Nisan, right? And they're going to fight him. They're going to be Moser Nefesh. They're going to literally put their lives on the line, even if he puts goons on the main highways to Jerusalem to stop people from going. He knows who he's dealing with, the Jewish people. Like the communists couldn't squelch us. He's going to squelch us seriously. So that's why he knew the goons aren't enough. So he needs to distract them so that they're literally going to celebrate on the wrong day. And then when they get to Jerusalem, if let's say they try to sneak away and there's nobody there and they're like, oh, I'll just go to Beit El. Oh, wow, that's where all the action is. Okay. And so basically he's steering the attention, or in the words of Hasidus, right, the Baal Shem Tov and even the sages before him spoke about how there are three dimensions to the world that form the acronym Ashan. Ashan literally means smoke, but Ashan in Kabbalistic literature, if you ever encounter it with the little apostrophe things, that means it's a sign that it's talking about an acronym. Sarale, what does Ashan stand for?
I'm not sure.
So it's the three dimensions of
Nefesh.
Oh, of course. There's no way you didn't know. Exactly. The three dimensions of existence, which is time, space, soul. Olam, world, which is space. Shana, year, time. Nefesh, soul, the whole spiritual dimension of physical. So all of our experience falls into one of these three dimensions of experience. Either spiritual experience, experience of time, or experience of space. So basically, Yeravam went for 2 out of 3. Now he ended up conquering 3 of 3, but that wasn't his intention. That was the other point I wanted to make very, very poignantly. And that is, Sarah Plotkin wrote me saying, what the heck? Like they didn't learn anything from one golden calf. He had to go set up 2? Seriously? So basically, the golden calf is a separate discussion that I don't want to choose today, but I just want it to be known that the golden calf is not an association with idolatry. And that's one of the big ironies, is that it is consistently an emblem of, let's say, physical worship or physical ritual of Judaism. So that's the problem with it, is that God says, no, I want you guys to think abstractly. But the reality is that it is the kosherest, the least tainted visual representation of godliness. And so Yeravam is not trying to set up an idolatry system. He wants them to continue worshiping Hashem, but just not in the time and not in the space, that the Davidic household will be celebrating and worshiping, Hashem. Now, the why, the calf or the cow. So I'm gonna stay very, very myopic right now. And in our chapter, I'm not going to zoom out and look at it holistically throughout the Tanakh. Maybe when we get to Sefer Yechezkel Be'ezrat Hashem, we can take a look at that, really zoom out and say, okay, what is a cow or a bull or a calf in Jewish iconography? And why is it not idolatry? I mean, it's so not idolatry, ladies, just to really mess with your heads. In the Gemara in Chagiga, that describes what the cherubs looked like, right? The kruvim that were on the Ark of the Covenant, the machlokis about what their faces looked like, and the sages of the Talmud have a pun there, or no, sages of the Mishnah Be'etzim, that they have a pun that they're riffing on two similar roots in Hebrew / Aramaic. Either they had the faces of babies, right, human babies, or there's a pun that they looked like calves. So you understand that they had wings, right, that are facing each other, and it's the body of some kind of like humanoid figure, but with the face of calves. Do you understand how not idolatrous that imagery is? That it was, there's even a hava amina, we entertain such a thought that perhaps the cherubs had either the face of calves or the face of humanoid babies. That is crazy. But that is how de-idolatrous, or whatever word you want to use, the association with calves is. So if we see golden calves, we're not immediately supposed to think, oh man, they already degenerated to idolatry. No. So now the reason I want to stay very myopic and like in this chapter is because Yeravam relies on this imagery, not only because it's the most kosher, the most klipas noga imagery, if he wants to create some kind of physical representation for Hashem, right? But second of all, because it serves his political purposes the best. Anyone remember rather, what tribe is Yeravam ben Nevat, or Yeravam in Ashkenazis, right? What tribe is he from? We did speak about this last time.
Ephraim.
Ephraim, which means he represents as the Bechor of which tribe? Because Ephraim isn't one of the 12 sons of Jacob, right? So we always have to make the mental translation of, Ephraim, AKA, which tribe?
Yosef.
Exactly, right. So now, let's zoom back in our memories to the last parsha of Bereshit. Yaakov is on his deathbed, and he blesses each one of the tribes, and he gives them their icon, right? Their logo, right? Except for Reuven, and Shimon and Levi, their like logos are a little unclear. But the rest of the tribes usually have some kind of animal represented logo, right? Dan is a snake, and Judah is a lion. Anyone remember what is Joseph's logo given to them by Jacob?
An ox.
Exactly. Bechor Shor Yosef, exactly. So using a bull or ox imagery is exactly what Yeravam needs to divert the attention to the fact that now we are being ruled by the other Bechor people. We've abandoned the Bechor of Judah, right, the Davidic household. That Bechor, he betrayed us. Now we've switched to the Bechor Yosef, right? We're now loyal to Rachel's children and not Leah's children, because Leah's children have betrayed us, however that was. So basically, the bull is the ancient archetypal symbol for Yosef and Yosef leadership at its finest. And we see those fingerprints everywhere in the Tanakh, that Yosef is always represented by a bull. And that's part of why the bull is a holy object, or not object, like an icon, because it has very, very deep roots, stemming with everything that Yosef embodies. And that is why Yaakov says to him, this is you. This is you in the fullest, deepest sense. And again, just to zoom out for a nanosecond, the reason I mentioned Yechezkel is because Yechezkel is really where we get the meat and potatoes of, as much as possible, Kabbalistic iconography. And what are kosher visuals and not kosher visuals? So Yechezkel in chapter 1 goes into graphic, crazy detail about what do the angels look like, and what's going on in the heavenly, posse up there, the heavenly entourage, the godly chariot, and what does it look like? And it's really, really insane. And one of the things that he mentions is that certain angels that are God's, servants, even though they have one head, each head has 4 faces. And basically the four faces are, the front is a human face, one side is a lion, the back is a vulture, right? Commonly translated as an eagle, that's a misnomer, right? Because Nesher in Tanakh is a vulture, not an eagle. Because eagles are more romantic, so that's why just for a long time, it was translated as eagle, but that's just like incorrect. And then the last face is of a bull. And again, you guys could already start putting two and two together by yourselves. Oh wow, a lion and a bull and a human face. What does that angel represent? The unity of what? Again, going back to Yaakov's blessings in Parashat Vayechi, right? We have two kings that are always butting heads until Yecheskel in chapter 38 says, with the third temple, they will rule hand in hand, not head to head. They are going to rule in perfect harmony, right? So who's represented by the lion and the bull?
Are we talking about like Malchus Beis David and Malchus Yisrael, or talking about like
Exactly
spiritually
right.
within us?
The
Okay.
lion, right? Gur Aryeh Yehuda, right? Judah is a lion, and Yosef, Bechor Shor Yosef. And so again, with the angel, you have the lion, the bull, exactly. And then Yecheskel talks about how Beit Yosef and Beit Yehuda will never fight anymore over power. And in the third temple, they're going to rule together. Just a secret, like again, if you want to understand the most powerful tension about why it was so crucial that David married Shaul's daughter, it was exactly in order to try to facilitate that union, because she's from Benjamin. She's one of the children of Rachel. And so he's trying to bear offspring with her in order to bring that, descendant into the world who is the flawless fusion of the bull and the lion, right? To bring in, to unify all 12 tribes for all eternity, to bring Mashiach. End game, that's it. The Bnei Leah and Bnei Rachel are no longer fighting. And then there's the horrible, tragic irony that we're told in, I think, chapter 7 of Shmuel Bet, that Michal was barren. And there we have the divine intervention saying you can try all you want, but it's not time for that just yet. The Jewish people have to go through 3,000 more years of Jewish history in order to get to Yecheskel's vision. But that's David already trying with all of his might to already bring Yecheskel chapter 38 into the world there, to like bypass all of the agony of the civil wars that we're going to read about in Sefer Melachim Aleph and Bet. So basically that is what Yeravam is trying to do. He's not trying to cause people to do idolatry, but as was Moshe's fear when he saw the calf, oh, are you kidding? As soon as you create images that are man-made for God, it's a slippery slope down all the way straight to idolatry. And we see very quickly they degenerate into idolatry within, no time whatsoever. So he ended up destroying time, space, and soul, right? He did manage to destroy all of the smoke. And again, the reason the sages use the acronym for smoke is because smoke or fog is always the imagery the sages use when they want to talk about something physical that is the most spiritual physical thing. Like, meaning smoke is the type of thing, you see it, you can smell it, and yet you can grab for it and you can't touch it. So it's the most ethereal thing. It's completely intangible. It is completely spiritual, and yet it's so physical and yet not. So that's also why when the Kohen Gadol goes into, before he enters the Kodesh Kodeshim, what does he do? He has to burn the incense and create a heavy fog, right? And he walks through the fog to enter the Holy of Holies. That's him shedding his last little connection to the physical world, but it's also protecting that fog, that intangible fog that is paradoxically tangible and not. That's what keeps him alive in the Holy of Holies, because he himself is becoming like the Arafel, right? The fog, that it's visible, it's smellable, but it's total, you can't grab it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, and yet you see it. And so it's that trippy space of here, but not here. And so that's the imagery consistently, about like fog and smoke, those dimensions. Okay, so with Yeravam, he moves So again, we see here, Sarah, we can kind of touch on your question about why the 8th month. So basically, there's so much like mystical thought behind it. As I mentioned, to be honest, I reread it a couple of times and I didn't fully understand it. And that's why I'm not even going to do it the injustice of trying to flub through it. So anyway, basically what I can tell you is that, Sarah, you pointed out that, oh, wait, 8th month, that like works out around Sukkot to Gesund, Gemma. And so basically, he's trying to recreate Sukkot, but a month later, right? Because he remembers that the Jewish people inaugurated the Beit HaMikdash in that time window. So he's once again distracting them and distorting their perception and saying, oh, no, it's fine. It's Sukkot. He even calls it Chag, right? Which is, again, the Torah's word for Sukkot. Whenever the word Chag appears, we spoke about this way back when. You don't have to guess which holiday. No, it's not Hanukkah. No, it's not Rosh Hashanah. If it says Chag by itself, you know the reference is only to Sukkot. So he talks about, that Vayas Chag Livnei Israel. You know that he's doing it on Sukkot, but his Sukkot, right? Which is in Cheshvan. And then the Hasidic masters also talk about how it's connected to the second temple because there was a part of the inauguration of the second temple that was in Cheshvan. So basically, it's some kind of prophecy that he received that he said, no, it's actually kosher that I'm doing this because anyway, the second temple, he gets his prophecy, it will be inaugurated in Cheshvan on this date, so it's fine. So he's literally one of these like complicated characters that is literally having his cake and eating it too, spiritually speaking, right? He's like not treif, but he's not kosher. He knows how to walk between the raindrops. So our chapter picks up the day of that he's inaugurating the two temples, right? And he's hanging out the one in Beit El, right? Pasuk Aleph, Vehine ish Elokim ba mi Yehuda bidvar Hashem el Beit El, Yeravam omed al hamizbech laktir. So it's not just, a regular Tuesday in like, August or something, just hypothetically speaking, where he's, just giving sacrifice, in Beit El. But that's why it's so frustrating that the Christians, the Gutenberg, divide up the Tanakh the way he did, because chapter 13 starts here. So we're thinking, oh, so time passed? Like, what's going on? What's the time frame here? No, the last pasuk of Yud Bet literally is the previous pasuk chronologically to the first pasuk of our chapter. That's literally, it says, Vayaz Chag Livnei Israel, he's doing Sukkot, a holiday. Israel, Vayal ala mizbech laktir, and he's ascending the ramp of the altar to give the incense offering. And just as he's doing that, a man of God, an anonymous prophet, is coming from Judah with the word of God in his mouth. He's coming to Beit El, so he's walking north from Jerusalem to Beit El. Yeravam omed al mizbech laktir. Note the words repeating. It's not like it's just a redundancy. It's to make you understand that the two scenes are literally overlapped. They're superimposed. Because again, when you're writing a book or text, it's so frustrating because you're limited to 2 dimensions, right? It's not like, so that's why in order for the reader to like sort of imagine, okay, and a second later, so that repetition occurs so we've sealed one image in the reader's mind of Yeravam and his grand, conquest, spiritual conquest to try to distract the Jewish people from their loyalty to the house of David religiously and politically. At the same time, cue a different character. The camera's zooming now to this, anonymous prophet walking up the highway from Jerusalem to Beit El, and he's approaching Yeravam, who in the previous scene was the main character. Now he's a secondary character because this man of God is the main character, but they were happening in the same day, same time, same place. So that is how Yirmiyahu created that, by just leaving those verbal cues for us. He's like, okay, you got it, same point in time, 2 different angles, 2 different cameras shooting. I'm splicing the footage. So, Vayikra LaMizbech. So this man of God, who the Gemara tells us is Ido, the prophet, who is one of the minor prophets, not the 12 minor prophets, just a minor prophet in the book of Melachim. I believe he does appear again, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere. And so he gets up and he calls out a gloom and doom prophecy, and this prophecy that he says is the bane of my existence in the entire Tanakh. Ladies, there's honestly no pasuk that pisses me off more than this pasuk about, mizbech. Like, first of all, does anyone know why does he say altar, altar? Why does he repeat it twice? It's an inanimate object. What's it gonna do? Not hear him? It's gonna respond. Why does he say altar, altar? I mean, there's only one altar there. Why is he calling out twice, altar, altar? Think a little, ladies. Because how many altars are being inaugurated today? Exactly, Gemma. 2. There's the one in Dan and the one in Beit El. So exactly, even though he's in Beit El, which is HQ, he's calling out saying both altars are treif. Both altars are no good. Don't think that one is okay and one is not okay. You think just because I'm a human, I can only be in one place at one time. I'm limited to time and space. But my soul is not limited. My soul sees what's going on in Dan. You think I don't see that one? Yeah, I see it too. Altar, altar, both altars. This is what God says about you. And this pasuk, pasuk bet, the bane of my existence, a son will be born to the house of David. Yoshiyahu, Josiah will be his name. And he will sacrifice the same Sarah Plotkin, who is inaugurating the Dan altar. Great question. I was wondering the same thing. We're not told. We're not told who was, but he probably sent some, either the prince or his vice president. I don't know, but basically he sent a nice contingency there, and they did inauguration there too. But because they didn't have Zoom yet, so Bekitzer, Josiah will, all these fake high priests or priests that you appointed just, according to your own whimsy, he will take all of their bones and he will burn them in order to defile this altar. You think this is a holy altar? You have some kind of jurisdiction to set up an alternative place of God where God's supposed to accept your korbanos, your sacrifices? No, I don't think so. And so, you will have to, anyone know how many centuries between Yeravam and Yoshiyahu, Josiah? 300. Now, this is the reason this pasuk pisses me off. There are two major reasons. One is that the prophecy is so far away, but the bigger problem I have with it is that the detail he goes into, this prophecy goes against every other prophecy we have in the rest of the Tanakh, except for one other prophecy in the book of Isaiah, right, where it talks about Koresh, Cyrus the Great. And the two things that these prophecies have in common, prophecy that's about an event that's going to occur 300 years from the prophet's life, so it's same time window, and going into detail about the name and identity of the political leader who isn't even a glimmer in his great-great-great-grandma's eye yet, and giving us details about him, that he's going to come to the world and what he's going to do. And the reason this ticks me off so badly, and it's not just me, I was very validated when I heard my favorite Tanakh teacher ever, Rav Yaakov Meidan Shlita, teaching this, and he just literally had a hissy fit in front of the lecture hall, like in front of all of us, saying, Jewish prophecy is useful because it does not go into detail. Because if I tell you, living right now in 2020, what's going to happen 300 years from now, it helps you zero. You know why? You're not going to be alive. Even if you tell your grandchildren, they're not going to remember. It's going to mean nothing to you in real time. So why give somebody this information just to show how cool I am? Guess what? It doesn't show how cool I am because I can't test if you're legit, if you're tripping on shrooms. Like, I have no way to test anything. So I can just say whatever I want. There's no checks and balances whatsoever. So Rav Meidan spoke about how frustrating having this type of prophecy is Jewishly, because we do not have prophecy like that, because it doesn't mean anything. It does not make someone do teshuvah. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't awaken the heart in any way. It's just like, okay, so my hindsight's going to be awesome one day, right? How does that help this generation right now? Oh, hi, it doesn't. And so giving these kinds of details, and for such a crazy time window, it's like, why? That's the major problem, is why? What purpose does this serve? Because ostensibly, it serves no purpose. And that's what's infuriating about this pasuk and that pasuk about Koresh in the book of Isaiah. Which again, Academia Bichlal just says, oh, this verse is just proof that, there were 3 different prophets named Isaiah, and they all lived over the span of like 300 years. And like, the book of Isaiah is not written by one person, because of course prophecy couldn't possibly exist, right? You can't have one guy seeing 300 years into the future. So literally, like, if you look up academia on the book of Isaiah, they talk about Deutero-Isaiah and Trito-Isaiah, which literally like is just the different authors that were hodgepodge together by the harebrained editor of the book of Isaiah, who we don't know what his name is, and so he just put together like first Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, and Trito-Isaiah into one book of Isaiah, and made people think that one guy wrote it. So anyway, yeah, that's right. Academia took that whole conundrum of, wow, how could one person know so many details about what's going to happen 300 years from now? All right, so moving on from that infuriating prophecy about what's going to happen in a time that's totally irrelevant, that this will be defiled by Josiah the king, one of the last, actually the last righteous king of the house of David. Okay, duly noted, Sarah. Okay, so then Yeravam, feeling very comfy in his crown, he sends out his hand and says, "Seize him," right? And here is where we start needing the Hebrew to understand what's going on. And then it says, and he could not, like, I didn't read the Hebrew, I'm just doing my own freestyle translation in real time, right? He couldn't return his hand, right? So in English, we call this what he's saying, seize him. And what happens to his hand? He can't retrieve his hand. He can't put it out of this position. Like, he can't move it from this position. So that's called paralysis, right? So no, he did not have a stroke on the spot, but he basically tries to move his hand to bend his elbow again, and he cannot. What it says, "Velo yachol lehashiva elav," and he could not return his hand to him. And then the something happens with the altar, right? And the ashes fall, and so basically he starts seeing the initial omens that anonymous prophet spoke about coming true. And he says to the prophet, please pray for me, please heal me, please do something, And then the prophet says, okay, and he prays for him, and God actually heals Yeravam, which actually the Hasidic masters are like, whoa, why would God heal a Russia like that? So that's a whole other discussion, which I see the time is ticking away, so I'm going to really floor it now. And then we're told, okay, and Hashem heals his hand. He's able to like bend his elbow and return his hand to him, which is a very strange expression. Vatashov yadilai, please let my, hand return to me. Vatashov yad melech elav, and his hand returned to him. Like, just say he bent it. Like, why do you have to say his hand returned to him? It didn't fly off of his body.
Also, it says kebarishona.
Whoa, what?
Kebarishona, like as it firstly was.
Yes. Very good. So we have a question on that, or you're just pointing it out?
The question, like, why was it, like, how was it originally? How was it firstly?
Okay. So hold that thought. All right. So basically, then he tries to, like, kiss up a little bit to this anonymous prophet. And he says, come back to my house. I'll throw a feast, And he's like, I want nothing from you. Get out of my face. I've finished my mission. I'm out of here. Now, one important point to make is that it's interesting that God is to send an anonymous prophet who's not Achiyah Shiloni to Yeravam. That's interesting because Yeravam already has a connection with Achiyah Shiloni, the guy who anointed him, the guy that like ripped the cloak and handed him the 10 pieces. So you would think that if God wants it to really get through to Yeravam, he would send somebody that he already has a rapport with, that he respects. He's sending some guy. Like, why is that? So basically, the sages point out that Achiyah has a mission that he's going to fulfill in the next chapter. And that's rebuking Yeravam directly. That, notice, Ido doesn't do. Ido, this, who's the anonymous prophet, who's not so anonymous according to Rashi, so he's not rebuking Yeravam. He's not saying, oh, and you're going to be punished. He's saying this altar is problematic. This whole religious system is problematic. But he doesn't say anything negative about Yeravam. Not only that, when Yeravam prays and says, please heal me, he heals him. So that, our sages point out, is the crux. That when Yeravam is going to get like his rebuke, we'll see in the next chapter, Achia comes to deliver that directly. Because one of the biggest rules we have in Judaism is you're not allowed to rebuke somebody unless they know, the listener knows 100% that every word coming out of your mouth is coming from a place of love and concern. If they have a shadow of a doubt that you're just trying to like shade them, stam, like that you're just like, ego tripping or something, or you have some other ulterior motive, you have a mitzvah to bite your tongue. And Rabbi Akiva says, if you know that you are going to say something that cannot be heard, you have a mitzvah not to say it. If it can be heard, beautiful, you have a mitzvah to do, you should rebuke your fellow, your loved one. But Rabbi Akiva says, only if you know that they know that it's coming from the heart. So God is not going to send a random prophet to rebuke Yeravam. So that's why for rebuking the nation, the religious system, he sends an anonymous guy, so that Achia can fulfill his task and say, Yeravam, what were you thinking? And Yeravam knows that it's coming from a place of love because this is the same person that anointed him to be king. This is not some guy that's just there to make him feel bad. Okay, so then all of a sudden, cut, right? We have a jump cut and the scene changes and suddenly we have a prophet who is living in Beit El, and then we have this weird vignette with a legit prophet and a question mark prophet. I don't even want to say he's a false prophet because it's not clear to anybody, including himself, that he's a false prophet. And that was part of the difficulty of false prophecy, is you weren't necessarily clued in on when it began and when your true prophecy ended. And that's a terrifying thought, to not know when you're not actually receiving texts from God, or where somebody's just hacked God's account and it's just some dude sending you spam. And you think that it's literally texts from God. And you're standing there on your soapbox, but God said, and the hacker is just laughing his head off saying, psych. So anyway, but we'll see that's a major motif throughout all of the book of Kings. And we'll see specifically in the book of Jeremiah, because he reveals to us, what are some of the cues? How could the nation know? Because then it's totally unfair. How could God put them in that situation if it's completely not, distinguishable? Who's a legit prophet and who's not? How could God expect them at all to know the difference and to follow the right guy? So Jeremiah, that's his career, because he was literally this lone wolf going against the herd of false prophets, and so he's the one who's really an expert in saying, okay, so these are the tactics that they used, and so in the future, if this ever happens, you should know a legit guy, these are some of the clues. They're not bulletproof, but these are some of the cues. Look for that, and if these guys, you hear this going on, that's kind of shady. So either way, Sarah had asked, what's the deal with the lion? You were like, oh, is this like a Shimshon type of thing where the lion kills the prophet, the true prophet, after he betrays God, right? Because he listens to the false prophet, or the question mark prophet, and he listens to him and sits and eats and then goes back on the path. The lion is who is sent to attack him. Sarah, do you now understand why a lion is sent to attack him? Sarah Pluckin, literally always looking for Shimshon clues. I hear you, girl, but Shimshon is kind of a one-off story in Sefer Shoftim, and I don't know that until the tribe of Dan is a major figure in a Tanakhic story, we won't necessarily have that imagery. Sorry, Yehuda, exactly. So basically, everything that's going on here is a clue to Yeravam and to this new religious system, to the religious figures of the system saying, wow, you guys are barking up the wrong tree. You think that you can have an autonomous system that's divorced from Jerusalem, that's divorced from the Davidic dynasty? Oh my goodness, no, that's not even possible. And so it's basically, and that's why it's always emphasized, a true prophet or man of God from Judah is coming, right, walking to the 10 tribes kingdom to warn them. And when he betrays his mission, a lion comes and destroys him, right? Because it's a betrayal of reuniting, or at least steering the 10 tribes' attention to what the true end game is. You guys are barking up the wrong end game. So that's with the lion imagery. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that in the Hebrew, the verb or the root that repeats 19 times in our chapter alone, ladies. 19 times in our chapter alone. Sarla, did you happen to take a look at the Hebrew or you read the English of this chapter?
I have the Navi. I read it in Hebrew. I have the Navi. Is it bo? Is like to come?
Close.
Okay. Because I see that a bunch of times.
True, but right next to the word that I'm looking for.
Oh.
Asher?
Is that clear or not? No, I'll use a different marker.
Shav. Yeah, I was just about to say that as my next guess.
So I'm going to share screen now, just so you can see with your own eyes. Don't take my word for it ever. You know the rule. Hold on, here we go. Share. Okay. Okay. Oh, wait, I want to zoom out. Okay, so I've highlighted right in pink every single time. This is just within the first 6 psukim. So note, here it's talking about his hand, but tivash yado, his hand, v'lo yachol lahashiva, and he could not return his hand. And then he says, please let my hand return. And then his hand returned. And then, next story, you will not return the same way that you came to Beit El. And he did not return, right? So that prophet is saying, no, I'm literally not going to eat, drink, anything. I'm not returning to you. Next, moving right along. And then it's interesting because the verb shav appears either in the positive or in the negative. Like here we see, lo uchal lashuv itach, I will not be able to go back with you. That's with our story with the question mark prophet inviting the true prophet, right? And I will not drink water, right? Lo tashuv lalechet b'derech asher halachta. God said to me, you will not return. Now here it's interesting because shav can mean, what are the two possible meanings of this root, shin bet?
To sit.
Oh, good. Exactly. So note that in our chapter, sometimes it means to sit, right? Vayashav ito vayochal, he sat. But here it's not clear whether it means he returned and ate with him or he sat with him. But here, vayihem yoshvim el hashulchan, completely unnecessary detail. Of course, they're not standing and eating. Of course, they're sitting next to the table. But no, in order to give the opportunity to name drop that root again, they're sitting at the table and eating, right? And note the juxtaposition that they're sitting at the table, right? Sitting, oops, 1 second. Sitting at the table where he's sitting at the table of the prophet that caused him to return, Asher Heshiva, that caused him to return. And then, next slide. Here we go. And so here, Vatashov, again, it's not clear whether it's return or sit because it works perfectly either way. And then, sure enough, he says, now he's going to return his body in order to bury it. And then finally, at the end, Vayishma Navi Asher Heshivo Min Haderech, right, the one that caused him to return from the path. And obviously there's a pun here, from the right path, from the godly path. And then, how does the chapter end? After this event, Lo shav Yeravam midarko hara'a, and Yeravam did not return from the evil path that he had set out. Vayashov vayas miktzot ha'am, and so like here vayashov means he continued, like he just went on, making these fake kohanes and like people serving in the wrong place, etc. And so the Gemara from all of this, one sec, is this it? Yes, this was the Gemara that I mentioned last time, that our sages said that because this motif, that everything that Yeravam was supposed to do, or was supposed to learn in this chapter, was you are not the end game. What was the point? That he's just a means to cause people to do teshuvah. But what did he end up doing? He caused them to stop doing teshuvah. So he's supposed to encourage them to return to the house of David, and he's doing everything possible to hinder it. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Bet Aleph, right, in page 102, this is the English translation from that website that I recommended. After this thing, Yeravam turned not from his evil way, right, the pasuk we just read. What is meant by after this thing? Rav Abba said, after the Holy and Blessed Be had seized Yeravam by his garment and urged him, repent, meaning do teshuvah, then I, you, and the Ben Yishai, right, David, will walk in the Garden of Eden. And who shall be at the head? Who shall lead? He inquired. Ben Yishai, someone from the Davidic house, shall be at the head. If so, I refuse. And so he said that his ego, his ambition, he crossed over that threshold from good intentions of, being a vehicle for the Jewish people to do teshuvah. He crossed that line of ego and became that megalomaniac that's now doing everything to seize power and to retain it. And so now the whole chapter is here rebuking him, saying, you're supposed to get the people to return to the house of Jesse. You're supposed to walk together with him, not erase him. And so basically he does not do teshuvah. So that's the whole deal with like not walking the same path, is that he's told, yes, you are meant to do teshuvah and not cause the people to do a healthy U-turn, not like, steering away from God. So with the eating and the drinking, there's a whole halachic discussion that I thought I was going to have time to get into, and I see I'm running out of time. In a nutshell, why the prophet was commanded not to eat or drink in that city is there's multiple explanations. One explanation, I think I don't remember if it's the Radak or the Ralbag, but one of them says, no, it's neither one of them. It is the Dat Mikra citing the Rambam, that says that there is an opinion that Beit El, once Yeravam turned it into a city that was possible that it would be used for idolatry, we have the concept of Ir Nidachat, which we'll be reading, I think, in 2 parshas. In Parshat Re'eh, not this week's parsha, Akev, but the following, we learn the laws of the city. What happens if an entire Jewish city becomes idol worshippers and they become missionaries, or a cult, let's say, and they start swaying and infecting other communities, with their cult. That's, again, like, not Judaism. Not that Judaism is a cult, although we have cults in Judaism, but whatever, let's not go there. So the point is that let's say there's an idolatrous cult, that we have an obligation to burn that entire city down and to, basically, extinguish that tiny growth and make sure that it doesn't spread, that fire doesn't spread. So basically all the people are executed. Rambam even asked, well, wait a second, I'm sure there are righteous people living there that want to, so what about their belongings? And basically one of the laws of an Ir Nidachat is no one may derive benefit from its spoils or its booty. So for example, if let's say a whole house burns down, if not a whole house burns down, let's say it's only damaged, you can't renovate it or refurbish it and move in saying, no, the tenants are not there. I'm a righteous person who keeps halacha, what's the problem? No, that place is destroyed and nobody may derive any benefit from it. So basically, that Mikra says probably for this reason, to not derive any benefit, no food, no water, just go in, do your mission and get the hell out of there as fast as possible. And that's why he's urged, do not get distracted because they are Jews, they are your brothers, and your Jewish heart will awaken and want to think, no, maybe there's another way, maybe, And it's like, no, just go in there, you know, military mission, say what you need to say and get out of there before you like start putting down roots and you start getting swayed and polluted yourself. You get infected by the virus. So that's one opinion. And that's, I think for me, that was like the best opinion that I saw about why he was commanded not to eat or drink there and just to go in and get out. But basically the motif of Lashuv, again, in English, it doesn't translate, but in the Hebrew, it just like juts out, just constantly, Yeravam, do teshuva, be a vehicle to get the nation to teshuva. And again, just as teshuva awakens the heart and returns it to the Davidic house, don't be so insecure that you're so scared of like losing your power to the house of David. Like rule with him. Don't rule instead of him. And so, but we see that that fails, or again, ostensibly it fails. In next week's chapter, we'll already see, okay, so what's next? Like, why even send a prophet if ostensibly every prophet that God sent in this chapter bombed epically? Like, Ido goes, says his thing, Yeravam still does his thing, doesn't care, you know, and this prophet also fails. So what's the point? So that Bezrat Hashem we'll get to next time. And when we see how Achia deals with everything, and we'll see, well, does he succeed a little bit more maybe? Alrighty. Take care, you guys.
Thank you so much.
No problem.